Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So today I got a fun and random episode for you guys this evening because over the weekend I got a lot of messages from a lot of different people asking me whether or not the MARS FPGA platform had been cancelled or had been killed. And I really wasn't sure why people were asking me this until they sent me some Twitter links and I kind of understood why they might be thinking that. So we're going to go over the entire MARS project, where it currently stands, and what I think is actually happening here. And before you go down below and comment, make sure you watch the entire video. I think this is going to be a very deep dive into how platforms actually get made and why I think MARS is probably still around. But it was this tweet right here, a scene from The Office where Michael Scott talks about everything being doomed. The people thought this was an acknowledgement that MARS FPGA was having some issues or otherwise not going to actually see realization as a retail product that you could buy at some point in time. They also talked about this being a Q1 launch, and you can see across their Twitter it could be presumed that something is going on. But again, the way they tweet, it could just be kind of getting people going and looking for a little bit of attention, which is fine. They can do whatever they would like. But I want to talk about what a platform truly is. You'll see here we have two MiSTer FPGAs and a Playdate on the table. The MiSTer FPGA is an off-the-shelf component where all of the development work has already been done by the manufacturer, where something like Playdate is a purpose-built PCB with purpose-built hardware that they actually have to manufacture before they're able to produce any games. Now if we take something like MiSTer FPGA, it uses the Thoracic DE10 Nano board. This is an off-the-shelf component. MiSTer as a platform was not developed on the FPGA level. No one went to Thoracic and said, we want to develop a board that can run console, arcade, and handheld cores. It is something where the work has already been done. All of the engineering, all of the R&D, all of the build of material work is done by Thoracic, and this is like just buying a game console off the shelf and then developing a game for it. If you take a look at the DE10 Nano board here, when you get it, all of the engineering work, all of the R&D, all of the effort to actually get the platform up and running has been accomplished before anyone writes a single core. Now of course people do develop the add-on boards, USB hubs, and I/O boards, and while I definitely don't have the talent to produce those sort of things, they are not as technically complex as the level of something like an FPGA board is. It is magnitudes different. But we know that MARS FPGA has been shown, and we know that it runs at least 1 to 2 cores. So it's not like this is vaporware, even if they put the vaporware icon on one of the PCBs as what seems to be a joke. It does exist, it can run some games, but MARS has been a little bit quiet in the intervening months about what it's going to be doing next. People have been very curious about the project, and they want to see the evolution of the hardware, what other games are going to be running, because the team does like to tease a lot of different games on Twitter. We've seen Dreamcast, we've seen some heavy-hitting arcade games. Basically, the MARS team has teased everything under the sun as potentially coming to MARS, and that gets people excited. So when they see a tweet about everything being doomed, they start thinking maybe there is a problem with the project, and I can totally understand that. They put the next-gen vaporware alert on one of their PCBs, so now people are starting to think with these tweets maybe it actually isn't coming out. You'll see there that we have the Titanium TI-180 chip in the middle, and that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about shortly, because honestly, I don't really think that MARS FPGA is not continuing as a project based upon what I know, who I've talked to, and also some of the technology behind it. But obviously to get to this prototype stage takes work, and that's what I mean about an off-the-shelf component like the MiSTer with the DE10 Nano board versus bespoke silicon hardware. You have to lay this entire board out, you need to pick your components, you need to deal with all of the different path tracing. Basically, you select the chips and then you develop an entire board and operating system and everything else around it. That is not a small amount of work, and I'll go into detail a little bit later in the video, my experience about delivering consumer goods to market. But take something like MiSTer FPGA out and put Analogue Pocket in. Again, we have something that is purpose-built. It is not an off-the-shelf component. That's what matters. This is purpose-built to play FPGA cores, as is the Playdate being more of an operating system. MiSTer FPGA is off-the-shelf, so all of that work has already been done for the core makers. Now if we go over to ePhoenix's website, the Titanium TI-180 FPGA series is what is currently listed as being on board the MARS FPGA. All of the specs match. They've announced this as being the chip for all intents intents and purposes, this is what is going on MARS FPGA if it does exist. And the MARS team has published the TI-180 specs and has indicated it is the TI-180, so we 100% unequivocally can say we're talking about the right chip line. And you'll see here that the TI-180 does come in multiple different packages, and that's pretty consistent across any manufacturer's line to have more than one package. But the thing is, if we pop over to DigiKey, you can buy these chips now, but you're going to find out something about them, which may in fact lead to a delay in the project. You're going to see at the top here, it says this part is an engineering sample and not fully tested. That means this silicon is non-final. You do not ship a retail product on evaluation silicon. You wait until the manufacturer, in this instance ePhoenix, has 100% released that chip to the market. You'll see in stock they have 74, and it's a 21-week lead time to get more. I'm not saying there's a part shortage. What I'm trying to say is I highly doubt the MARS team would be willing to ship an FPGA board that does not have finalized silicon for the FPGA. The MARS board, as it's been shown and it's shown playing games, is a prototype, and it is using prototype hardware as far as I can tell, because there is not a single available TI-180 chip on the market that you can purchase from reputable vendors that is not indicated to be an engineering sample. Now, sometimes engineering samples and the final silicon are basically one-to-one. It could still just be going through the validation process, or ePhoenix might be spinning up an entire new run of chips to correct some issue or otherwise improve the performance before they release this as a fully working retail product. And if we go down the line for all of ePhoenix's chips that are available to buy on DigiKey, you're going to see that engineering sample notice atop every single page. And that means that none of the ePhoenix line is completed silicon. Now, of course, it still works, and many other CPU and other silicon manufacturers send out engineering samples as well, and sometimes those do end up being final, but it might be a situation in which the MARS team is waiting for ePhoenix to finalize the silicon, improve it, or otherwise make it available in a finalized version, because I would never ship a product on prototype hardware. You're just asking for major issues then. No manufacturer would ever do that. So perhaps this tweet here is just an indication that there may be a delay, because they did say Q1, and that does make a difference because that's what people set their expectations to. But let's use a visual metaphor, my favorite thing in the world, to try to get you to understand something. This is a vacuum cleaner. It explains itself fully on screen. I don't need to explain to you what that is. Now imagine you wanted to start a cleaning company cleaning people's houses. MiSTer FPGA is like buying the vacuum cleaner from Dyson. You are buying the product, you don't need to manufacture it whatsoever. Something like MARS FPGA or Playdate, this is like building the vacuum yourself before you open up the cleaning service. That is much harder. Try and imagine building a vacuum versus just buying one. Now, back in the day when I worked at Burton, I was part of the team that worked in conjunction with Motorola to develop a Bluetooth jacket with full controls in the sleeves, being able to take phone calls, listen to music wirelessly. This was a long time ago, and I'm definitely dating myself here. This was 2006 when I worked with the Motorola engineers to ship this product. And I will tell you something right now. We were a full season late on this. We had problems with the battery, with cold, and with many other PCB issues that just gave us hell, and it took multiple revisions, multiple prototypes, until we got to a final design. We missed our deadline by a full season, but that was fine because we wanted to release a product that we could stand by because the Burton name was valuable. If the titanium chip is not yet done, that would indicate why there are delays. Now, there could be delays on other fronts as well, because the MARS team has talked about every single MiSTer FPGA core available day one. That is going to require an epic amount of work to get the entirety of what MiSTer FPGA does to a new FPGA with a different toolchain and software development kit to be able to run on MARS. So it's possible that maybe they have talked to ePhoenix, maybe those chips are going to be available next week, and maybe the time frame is just changing depending upon how long it's taking them to potentially get every single MiSTer FPGA core operating on a MARS FPGA board the day you take it out of the box, because that is what they have stated in plain text: every MiSTer core playable day one. I think they maybe actually said day zero, but it means basically the exact same thing. But think about the amount of work that would take to do something like that. So as far as the tweet is concerned, I don't really think it's indicating that MARS FPGA is dead, but I understand that their communication style and their marketing may confuse some people to think that. And honestly, when it comes to spending your money, you do want to make an informed decision, and it would be great if the MARS team actually communicated in plain language what is actually going on with the project, because the ePhoenix chip does exist, the development board does exist, but it is in non-final hardware. So my guess is the reason you haven't really seen much on the MARS front as of late is they're probably waiting for that silicon to be finished so that they can continue development on their board. Or I could be completely wrong. Who knows? This is presumptive. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you're still excited about MARS, and I'll talk about the project next time they have updates. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.